I'm sitting in the window with a glass of cool white wine, watching as, one by one, the lights in the house next door to ours flicker on. It's dark outside, the February night giving nothing away, and the Edwards' house glows against the gloom. Their walls are cream, not a colour I'd choose, and their front garden runs down to the road, parallel to ours. Inside, I imagine their house to be a mirror image of my own. 4 spacious bedrooms, a wide, gleaming kitchen, beams that date from the 15th century framing the stairway. I've never been inside, not properly, but everybody knows our properties are the most sought after in the town. The biggest, the most expensive, the ones they all want. There's a creaking sound from upstairs. My husband, Jack, moving around in our room, loosening his tie, the clunk of his shoes dropping onto the floor of the wardrobe. He's been drinking tonight. The open bottle of whiskey sits on the counter, sticky drops spilling onto the surface. Quietly, so as not to wake the children, I stand, move away from the window and begin clearing it up, putting the bottle back in the cupboard, wiping the little circle of stain off the marble countertop, wiping away the evidence of the night, of the things he said to me that I want to forget. I'm good at forgetting, blanking the slate. Practice makes perfect, after all. The house is tidy and still. The bunch of lilies Jack bought me last week stand stiff on the windowsill, their large pink petals overseeing the room. Apology flowers. I could open up a florist if it wasn't such a tacky idea. There's a sound outside and, curious, I move to the front window, lift the thick dove-grey curtain to one side so that I can see the Edwards' front garden. Their porch light has come on, lighting up the gravel driveway, the edge of their garage on the far side, and the stone bird bath at the front, frozen over in the February chill. I've always thought a bird bath was a little too much, but each to their own. Rachel Edwards' tastes have never quite aligned with mine. We've never been close, Rachel and I, not particularly. I've tried, of course. When she and her first husband, Mark, moved in a few years ago, I went round with a bottle of wine. White. Expensive. It was hot, July, and I imagined us sitting out in the back garden together, me filling her in about who's who in the town, her nodding along admiringly when I showed her the wisteria that climbs up our back wall, the pretty garden furniture that sits around the chimera on the large flagged patio. I thought we'd be friends as well as neighbours. I pictured her looking at me and Jack wistfully, envying us even, popping round for dinner, exclaiming at the shine of the kitchen, running a hand over the beautiful silver candlesticks when she thought I wasn't looking. We'd laugh together about the goings-on at the school, the lascivious husbands in the town, the children. She'd join our book club, maybe even the PTA. We'd swap recipes, babysitter numbers, shoes at a push. But we didn't do any of those things. She took the wine from me, naturally, but her expression was closed, cold, even. My first thought was that she was very beautiful. The ice queen next door. "My husband's inside," she'd said. "We're just about to have dinner, so perhaps I can pop round another time?" Behind her, I caught a glimpse of her daughter, Claire. She looked about the same age as my eldest son, Harry. I saw the flash of blonde hair, the long legs as she stood still on the stairs, watching her mother. She never did pop round, of course. For weeks afterwards I felt hurt by it, and then I felt irritated. Did she think she was too good for us? The other women told me not to worry, that we didn't need her in our little mothers group anyway. "You can't force it," my friend Sandra said. Over time, I let it go. Well, sort of. When Mark died, I went round to see Rachel, tried again. I thought she must be terribly lonely, rattling around in that big house, just her and Claire. But even then, there remained a distance between us, a bridge I couldn't quite cross. Something odd in her smile. And then, of course, she met Ian, husband number 2. After that, I stopped trying altogether. I see Claire every now and then, grown even prettier in the last few years. Jack thinks I don't notice the way his eyes follow her as she walks by, but I do. I notice everything. I hear footsteps on the gravel and recoil from the window as a figure appears, striding purposely towards our front door. I open it before they can knock, thinking of my younger children, Finn and Sophie, tucked away upstairs, dreaming, oblivious. Rachel is standing on our doorstep, but she doesn't look like Rachel. Her eyes are wide, her hair all over her face, whipped by the wind. "Jane," she says, "I'm sorry to bother you, She's peering around me, her eyes darting into our porch, where our coats are hanging neatly on the ornate black pegs. My Barber, Jack's winter coat, Harry's scruffy hoodie that I wish he'd get rid of, Finn and Sophie's little duffels, red and blue, with wooden toggles up the front. Our perfect little family. The thought makes me smile. It's so far from the truth. "Have you seen Claire? Is she here?" I stare at her, taken aback. Claire is 16, a pupil at Ashton Secondary, the year below Harry, year 10. I see her in the mornings, leaving for school, wearing one of those silky black rucksacks with impractically thin straps. She can't possibly get all her books in there. Like I said, we don't mix with the Edwards much. I don't know Claire well at all. "Jane?" Rachel's voice is desperate, panicked. "No," I say. "No, Rachel, I'm sorry, I haven't. Why would she be here?" She lets out a moan, almost animalistic. There are tears forming in her eyes, threatening to spill down her cheeks. For a moment, I almost feel a flicker of satisfaction at seeing the icy mask melt, then squash the thought down immediately. Just because she's never been neighbourly doesn't mean I have to be the same. "She's not with Harry or something?" I stare at her. My son is out, a post-match pizza night with the boys from his football team. He took Sophie and Finn to school today for me. The night out is his reward. If I'm honest, I've always thought he might have a bit of a crush on Claire, like father, like son. But as far as I know, she's never given him the time of day. Not that he'd tell me if she had, I suppose. His main communication these days is through grunts. "No," I say. "No, she isn't with Harry." Her breath comes fast, panting, panicked. "Do you want to come inside?" I ask quickly. "I can get you a drink. You can tell me what's happened." She shakes her head, and I feel momentarily put out. Most people in Ashton would kill to see inside our house. The expensive furnishings, the artwork, the effortless sense of style that money makes so easy. Well, it's not totally effortless, of course. Not without its sacrifices. "We can't find her," she says. "She didn't come home from school. Oh, God, Jane, she's disappeared. She's gone." I stare at her, trying to comprehend what she's saying. "What? I'm sure she's just with a friend," I say, putting a hand on her arm as she stands at the door, feeling her shake beneath my fingers. "No," she says. "No, I've called them all. Ian's been up and down the high street looking for her. She's normally home by 4:30. School gets out just after 4. We can't get a hold of her on the mobile. We've tried, and it goes to voicemail. It's almost 8 o'clock. She's clenching and unclenching her fists, blinking too much, trying to control the panic. I don't know what to do. "Shall I come round?" I ask. "The kids are asleep anyway. Harry's not here, and Jack's upstairs." If she thinks it odd that my husband hasn't come down, she doesn't say anything. Rachel! There's a shout. Ian, the aforementioned hubby number 2. He appears in my doorway, a large, oversized iPhone in his hand. His face is red. He looks a bit out of breath. He's a big man, ex-army, or so people say. Works in the city, takes the train to Liverpool Street most mornings. I know because I see him through the window. He runs his own business, engineering, something like that. Always a jovial tie. I've heard him shouting at Claire in the evenings. I can never make out what he's saying. I suppose it must be hard being second best. I know I wouldn't like it. "The police are on their way," he says, and at this, Rachel breaks down, her body curling into his arms reaching out to stroke her back. "If there's anything I can do," I say, and he nods at me gratefully over his wife's head. I can see the fear in his own eyes and feel momentarily surprised. It takes a lot to unsettle a military man, unless he knows more than he's letting on. He never did get on well with Claire.